and I'd just like to welcome you all tonight to this event. For those of you who don't know me, I am Paul Kelly. I am the director of the new community-led housing hub for the Liverpool City region, which was launched on Saturday. And our aim is to get community-led housing embedded in the policies across our region and funding to be released to enable projects to happen. And what we're doing through this festival is trying to promote the models, the different models of community-led housing that exist out there, and also then provide expert advice and support to groups to get their projects going and moving. So we've had all sorts of discussions already. This is the 11th event we're doing out of 20, looking at all aspects of community-led housing, which is fantastic, and it's been good. So tonight, I'm really pleased to have Hazel from Granby 4 Streets CLT, which many people know about, many people know different things about. And really, we're just going to have a conversation. Hazel's going to talk us through a bit of the Granby journey, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation about it. So without further ado, I will pass over to Hazel.
Thank you everybody, and it is nice to see so many faces I know, and it's even nicer to see the faces that I don't know. Granby, the Granby story is quite lengthy, and it's very well documented. The story of the CLT and the history of Granby is very well documented. So unless there's anything specific you want to know, I think it's a bit of a waste of time to go through it all. But the CLT was helped to be formed by Ronnie, who's part of our audience. And I'm sure Ronnie can tell you about the meeting that he held after the housing market, after the Pathways initiative was stymied. Granby were very happy with that, whereas other people were really disappointed. But there were a few people, and Ronnie was one of them, who helped the Residents Association, which had been formed for many years. The Residents Association goes back 30 years. So our history as a CLT is not terribly long, although it's pretty good now. I think it's what, 10, 11 years, but or maybe less, maybe it just seems long. But our history of as a group fighting for an area goes back 30 odd years under the Granby Residents Association. And many people, one of the founder members of the Granby Residents Association was quite an amazing woman called Dorothy Couillard. And bits and pieces about Dorothy Couillard can be found on the internet and in Liverpool histories. And she's passed now. Her funeral was a gas, but that's a different story. It shouldn't have been, but it was the most, it was an odd thing, but that's a different conversation. But Dorothy is well remembered. So the market for which Granby 4 Streets is very proud was actually formed before the CLT, and was one of the basis, it was a basis on which we could form the Granby, that blooming green triangle, which is the gardening projects that happen in the Granby area. That was formed about, what, 15, 16 years ago now. And that has been absolutely fundamental to forming the CLT. So if anybody here isn't already in a CLT or is looking to form a CLT, don't wait for that. Start doing the simple, important things straight away, like, you know, making your area look good. You know, if there's a bit of spare ground, start digging it. It's astonishing how a bit of gardening, if one person starts cleaning or gardening in the public domain in your street, people will stop and ask what they're doing. And one piece of advice I always give is, if you want someone to help you to clean the street, don't go out with one broom, go out with two and leave one leaning. And it's much, much easier for people to give half an hour support if there's already the equipment waiting for them. But the difference, the CLT was really formed not initially to be a housing provider. We were really formed to claim an area as ours and to make a change. And I think we have made a change, because what was one of the least desirable areas, or was deemed to be one of the least desirable areas of Liverpool to live in, has become much sought after. And it's a struggle in a sought after area to keep rents down and to keep house prices sensible. And Ronnie is well versed on the struggle that we had to keep, because we had to sell some of the houses that were done up in order to refund. And Ronnie will tell you about the struggle that we had setting up a method by which we could keep the houses affordable in perpetuity. So they're tied to the median income, not the median wage, but the median income of the area of Granby. And the house prices are tied into that via a covenant. And it took a long time to organise, but it was a far better deal than shared ownership. So I think everybody knows where Granby is. If you don't, shout up and I'll tell you. There you go. Everybody knows where it is. Great. So really, ask me questions and I'll do my best to answer them. And some people who are already at the meeting know the answers. So please feel free to chip in. We're better collectively. We have a better conversation if other people talk. So fire away.
Can I ask a question, Hazel?
Sorry. Yes, of course.
Obviously, we've just got our first project on the go, and we've got a building where we're going to have 4 flats and some retail space on the bottom.
Yeah.
Now, our query really is, do you become a private landlord? Do you go to a letting agent, or do you try and involve another kind of housing association? What have you found has been the best way? We
found that the best way, because we knew nothing about housing, but we found that the best way, once we got properties, was to go through a local housing association. So we go through Steve Biko Housing Association, which is a small cooperative, and that is quite specific to the Granby area. I think you could go to a letting agent. You could, I think there's, because of all the law and everything, you could become private landlords. I think there's quite a lot to look into. And I'm sure that there's a lot of advice out there, but certainly for us, it was a small local housing association.
Do you keep the money then from the rental, or do they take a proportion of it?
Well, they charge us a fee for managing, because they also manage our repairs, and we work with Northwest Housing Advisory, and they're very good, and they offered their services initially for 12 months free of charge, and they helped us with our governance and, you know, forming a board, policies and procedures. They have an accountant who helps us with our books, and then they go to their accountants, and they also manage the repair line for Steve Biko, so we have that as well. They help with our insurances, so we go into, we're part of an insurance policy that covers Steve Biko's houses as well as ours, and so there is an economy of scale. But also we'll probably look at this as well, because the CLT itself is going through some quite big changes. I'll be 66 soon, and I'd like to leave now, because I've done 30 years with the GRA and then the CLT with some breaks. But it needs to be handed over to younger people like Nazra, who I know is in our audience, and she's also one of our tenants. And, you know, an intelligent, lively woman who lives in the area, and what more do you want? You know, with a lot more youth about her than I've got, and new ideas. And I think that that's important, as well as that younger people are brought on and their ideas, because there's loads of ways that you can manage your property, and I think you have to find what's right for you. But ask, you know, ask housing associations, find out who your local one is, and enter into a dialogue, because they might also have builders that they can recommend and things like that. Thanks for that, Hazel. It's a pleasure.
Just so everybody is clear, you know, that's why the hub has been set up. That's why the hub's been funded to set up. And I think it's really important. So it's quite interesting right now in Liverpool, in the region, that, you know, we've had a huge history of housing co-ops being developed. We've got a current crop of community land trusts being developed, but there's a whole range of different models out there. And sometimes we're a bit sort of everybody runs to one part of the boat because that's what everybody's doing. Well, actually, what the hub has been set up to do is to provide that really expert, impartial advice around all options, so that you make the right choice for you. That might be different for your community compared to another community. So that's very much what we're hoping to embed here. And obviously, people like Granby, there's huge experience to build on. But people like Granby,
or not to build on,
that didn't have that expertise support, really, I suppose, around them.
We had a lot of we did have support and help, and we had support and help from different quarters. The best support and help that we got was actually from people who'd known us as a residents association. Some had worked against us because they were working for the council. Some worked with us because they were working for housing associations, because the Granby Residents Association was set up to stop further demolition. And we've had a question from Peter Bear. Hello, Peter. You've got sound problems, but there you go. He wanting to know where we got the idea to set up the CLT. That really came out of a small book that Dorothy Couillard had got, and it was about an island of Scotland. I think it was the first CLT in the country who'd actually clubbed together and bought their own island. Thank you, Egg. Thank you very much. And we looked at it and couldn't see how we could apply the model to us, but it sort of stayed simmering away in the background for years. And then when the Pathway Renewal Initiative and the money was all funded, you know, taking the Housing Market Renewal Initiative went with the coalition government, that really gave an opportunity for us to look again. And I think that Ronnie Hughes, who's part of this meeting, was actually instrumental in helping us to pull together a meeting and discuss community land trusts. And Ronnie knew a lot about housing and land trusts and stuff, and he basically helped to inject the enthusiasm into us to keep trying and to look at something else, because we'd reached a stage where the streets were so empty and the council were just going to basically had decided they were just going to let us fall apart, that they couldn't make us move. They'd got all of the housing association and tenanted houses empty, and it was just a few house owners, and they just thought, well, you know, we'll leave you to rot. That was when the lead was stripped off the roofs of the empty houses, thereby causing ours just to turn into awfulness. But that's the idea came from other community land trusts. There are no new ideas. There are just ideas that you manage to learn about and try and implement. So nothing that I tell anybody here hasn't been said or tried before, but because it's tried by different people in different ways at different times, sometimes it works.
Can we just bring in Jan, and then it's not David, is it? Is it Steph? Bring in Jan and then Steph.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to, I mean, I've always loved the, you know, Granby and the 4th Street. So I just wondered about the role of art and artists and the biennial connection. How significant has that been for you, and how has it really changed the dynamics of the area?
I think what changes the dynamics of the area is people. Right, and people bring with them all sorts of ideas, and I think art is broad because it's anything from storytelling to poetry to graffiti to knitting to what people see as women's crafts, which, you know, so therefore they're humbled, you know, things like darning and patchwork and stuff, and they're never humble crafts, you know, they're just fantastic. And then to bigger arts, to the creation of huge pieces. But Granby's got a history of art and black artists and black craftspeople. And really, I think it all came together in a very public way when we met with Assemble, and they worked with us and they worked with us to renovate 10 houses and then 11 houses. And it involved the people who live there. It involved people in the street, at the street markets. So the doorknobs were helped to be made by the little doorknobs in the houses. They were helped to be made by the kids who lived on the street or who attended the market. And because it brought about the Turner Prize, which gave us world attention. And I would say that art is critical and crucial, and it's ongoing. And it's also, it gave us a £250,000 grant to develop the Winter Garden, which basically is such a joy. And I'm going to paste a link up there, which gives you a virtual 360-degree tour around the Winter Garden. Hello, Nazra. How lovely to see you. Yeah.
So inspiring.
It is, but art is inspiring, and art is there for everybody. I think, you see, to me, life is life. And life's bread and butter, and sometimes it's grim, sometimes it's bread with no butter. But art is the seasoning that you want on the food of life. And I feel, I'm not an artist, but I feel so appreciative. I'm married to a musician as well. I mean, life is flooded with beauty, and it's not just beauty the way I see it, it is beauty the way other people see it. And art tells stories and focuses people, and it brings people together. And part of our Winter Garden is about having artists in residence who actually work with the community and work with each other and create something that that is about Granby. So it's not about people coming in with foreign ideas. And we love artist gardeners as well, because there's really a lot to be said for that. So the art of nature. So anyway, I think I've said enough about art.
I think you're just the best advocate for just totally everything I believe in, just so poetically put, just so admire everyone involved. Thank you.
But that's what a community land trust is, isn't it? It starts with community, it ends with trust. And the bit in the middle, the land, is the thing that you're on. That's what pulls you together. So it is about neighborhood, it is about sharing, it is about skills and talents. And those skills and talents, every child knows they're an artist until someone tells them they're not. And the trouble with adults is we believe that we're not good because someone's bothered to tell us when we were little that we were no good. And we really need to have that free expression. I look at Nazareth and I think of her daughter, and I know her daughter knows that she's a great artist, because nobody's going to tell her she's not. And if we can just give that to every child in the Granby area and then spread it around, then they will be creative. And if you can be creative with art, you can be creative in your life choices and in what you do. And then, which is why Assemble works so well. Assemble's been absolutely critical to us, because they're not just architects. They're artists and they're engineers, and they work as a collective. And I think that that is what's helped. So they wanted to work with us, and that has made all the difference.
Can I just bring in Steph with her comment?
Yeah.
Hi Hazel, hi everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to ask really about the local business side of things. And it says on the website about bringing some of the retail spaces back into use for creativity and enterprise. Just keen to explore a bit about how you did that and how it went.
Well, we've done some. We've really not got as far as we want to, but I think that the market is a really good starting point, and that has enabled people to have a go to sell things. We've got some people who only they do hobby crafts and things. We've got one woman, Rosa, who has a stall on the market, and she makes the most beautiful stuff from scraps and odds and ends and bottle tops. And it's quite astonishing, but she doesn't want to make a living, but she just wants to sell a few bits that she's made, and she's quite happy with the market, doesn't want to do a website. We've got other people who want to start a small business, and Granby is a great place for them to do it. So Home Baked have a store, which to me is critical, because who can live without a home baked pie? You know, and it spreads them. So they're in Anfield, which is quite a way away, but it brings them. So I think that street markets right across the city are actually really important for helping to start local businesses. It also alleviates a lot of risk. So it gives people a taste in starting business. They're great meeting points. Local markets are great meeting spaces, and we would find it hard to revive Granby as a high street. So I think that we really do have to concentrate on building the market and getting permission, you know, to make Granby a market area, and to pull businesses in, and to, you know, to encourage our local people to carry on taking stalls. So we keep our prices very low, because you want to be affordable. And when I say low, I'm talking about £10 for a day. And then I think it's a little bit more if you need electricity and water, because we, you know, so there's a lot of things to be thought of. We've got one vacant premise at the moment, because Granby Workshop moved from 142 Granby Street, and because they expanded, now they employ a lot of local people. So it's worthwhile looking at Granby Workshop's website to see what they make. And they make beautiful stuff. It's all pottery, and they do stuff with reclaimed clay as well.
Sorry, Hazel.
If I can just cut in.
Nadra's going to come in, I think.
Yeah, if I can just cut in.
Please
in
do.
terms of the business side of things, the business community assets, obviously we do have the four corner plans. 142 Granby is what Hazel's just been talking about. Now, aside from the market, what I would say as a resident and as somebody who was born and raised in the area that used to play all over Granby Street in the 80s, when it was a busier high street, right the way through to the decline, coming back after living in London, America, Manchester. I've been back for 5 years, and what I have noticed is the Granby High Street, just because of Granby CLT, has developed, and there has been new businesses established aside from us. I think it's a lot of it is the knock-on effect. You go to Lodge Lane and you see planters. That is directly because of Granby Community Land Trust, the Blooming Triangle. So there's a lot to say about how we have inspired Liverpool, the wider Liverpool 8. So although we haven't yet achieved the four corners to the extent that we would have liked, I think the very fact that there's new businesses arriving on Granby, which hasn't happened in decades, is testament to what we do.
Thank you, Nazra. I think that was brilliant. It's the ripple effect. And you see, if everybody tries to do something, then all the ripples will start joining together, and we'll make a storm. And
Most
I think
definitely.
this is what Paul Kelly's trying to do. And, you know, there is power. The more the better, because there's a new CLT that's formed, L8 Matters. And I just think that this is a great opportunity. In London and in other places, you have loads of different CLTs that have overlapping areas. And I think that if we can work together, that it can be more powerful than the CLT. You know, maybe L8 Matters will give us the push that we need to maybe not be so gentle in our pursuance of things. Because one of the things that I have learned is that everything that you do takes twice as long with a bit more time added to it. And it's not always because of us. That bureaucracy and dealing with local councils is a bugger. So other CLTs can only be a good thing. They're not a threat. And I think that we have to pull together to get the right funding, because money is always a difficult one.
Can I bring in Barbara and then Ronnie?
Yeah, please.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Granby, the first I heard about it was a few years ago. I mean, I've lived in Bootle all my life, and you know of areas, but sometimes they're a bit far afield. But I think I read in a Facebook post, it was a few years ago, about your market.
Yeah.
And I said to Ken, let's go. We should see other areas, you know, around where we live. And I can honestly tell you that we ate our way from the front to the end of your market. And it was wonderful. But do you know what struck me is the people there were happy. They weren't forcing anything on us. They were happy to talk and say hello and wave. And where we actually parked our car, we had to walk past some very large houses that were a bit run down. And I can remember saying, in those houses is just fantastic. One thing I wanted to say was, how do we find out when your market starts again?
Right, it'll be, the local media is very kind to us. We've got a Facebook page, and I think it's called Simply the Best, but if you put in Granby Market, that'll bring it up. We have a Twitter feed. I think we've got Instagram. Ronnie's sense of space, he's very good at reminding people, and I think the markets will start in the summer. So I think the markets, and they'll start again on the first Saturday. So I would say probably the first Saturday of July or the first Saturday of August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think you should think on this. Further afield would like to visit you too.
Oh yeah, we do have people from further afield. We rely on word of mouth as well, and you know, the internet. So people like you, and there's somebody here from Cheshire. So yeah, come on over, because I just think I love it. But then I would, you see, I'm totally biased, and it's run by volunteers and has been since it started. I think we're ready to go into the next phase and start to look at how we can move this on to every Saturday. And then, you know, so it's once a week and then a bit more. And I think that what Nazra said was totally inspiring. And she reminded me of really why I started in this in the first place. That's what I mean. We need more Nazras.
All your passion is amazing.
Thank you.
It really is.
Thank
so
you.
Impressed.
Oh, thank you very much. But I mean, L8 matters, Liverpool 8 matters, it's very true. Granby Street matters, but more than anything, people matter. And what matters is not just a decent home, but the environment in which you live. So hence the gardening, hence the market. And the market started as a street sale. Kevin, I will mention Kevin and Gina, because Kevin does house clearances and had a house full of stuff. And he said, do you think I could put a table sale up? And it was in an empty street. And then someone else, Maria, said, oh, I'll make tea and coffee. And then I made some cakes. And we had 3 little stalls. And we had such a nice day in an empty street with 3 little stalls. And it literally grew from there. And I think the whole thing is, if something needs doing, make a start. Make a start, but leave the door open for others. Because one of the questions that always gets asked to me is, how do you deal with people who are hard to reach? And I think, what do you mean hard to reach? I don't think anybody's hard to reach. We're just hard to access. So it's not how you reach people. It's how do they get to you? How do they get therein? Are we open enough? Are we transparent enough? Do we make enough things public? And it's really, really hard. Getting money is hard, and making sure that everybody knows what's happening is really hard. Harder than I ever thought it would be, because I'm a chatterbox, so you think that spreading information is easy, but it's not. And spreading the right information is damn near impossible. It's easy to start a rumour. So, and what's this one say? Everybody loves.
Ronnie was going to ask.
Oh right, yeah. Sorry,
Ronnie, you're on mute. Sorry, the age-old 2021.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to follow up on what Hazel was saying about time, because I think there is an impression that Granby Street happened all of a sudden, and that's because the money to do the houses, the money to do other things, and that sudden surreal, absolutely surreal getting of the Turner Prize all happened very, very quickly. But actually,
and even then, it wasn't that quick.
No, but it all happened 2015, 16.
Yeah.
But actually, Kevin and Maria pulling the tables out to start the street market was 2010. And that was when I first started to get involved. We had a whip round between about 7 or 8 of us one day early in 2011 and picked up on the idea that was around about the Community Land Trust. We then called ourselves a Community Land Trust because we thought it sounded good before we really went and did it. You know, the whip round was for 74 quid to register as one. And then it was another 4 going on 5 years before all that fury and all that sudden acclaim, if you like, hit. But during that 4 and 5 years, things happened, like the gardening was happening, the street market was utterly essential. There would be no Granby Fort Street without that market. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, absolutely.
But the market gave us, the gang in the middle, being the Community Land Trust, who weren't the market, it gave us somewhere we could talk to people, gave us somewhere we could develop our ideas, but it also gave us something to aim at every month. Even when there was nothing else happening, there was the street market to talk to people at. So by the time a whole load of accidents, political, social, investory, and just time had happened, and we got enough money to get onto site with those first few houses, we were a shit hot team. We knew we knew each other inside out. And so that when, you know, I always mention there was this crazy moment that happened one day when I said to one of the others in the team, if you'll do the Washington Post this morning, I'll do China Daily this afternoon. You know, it's the kind of thing that you never expect to happen. But we all knew what we were good at. We all knew when one of us was knackered and wanted to step back a bit. We were a very, very good team. And that's what made it community-led. It wasn't that we could just turn up one day, put a badge on ourselves, say we're community-led. We formed a very strong community of that team. The team doesn't last forever, like Hazel and Nazra have said. You know, the team needs renewing and replacing. There's more or less, compared to I think when I first got involved in Granby, there were about 30 or 40 of the houses lived in. Nearly all the houses except Juicy Street are lived in now. So there's an entire new community there ready to take over and take on whatever the next level is. And I think that's quite right, because otherwise you fall into the mistake of the original movers and shakers actually becoming the status quo. And I don't think that's happened in Granby, and I don't think it will. But it's something that you have to be aware of. We don't own the Community Land Trust. The point of it being a body on its own is that it's there for someone else to take over. And I know Nazra has just been lined up earlier on to take over from Hazel. That's up to Nazra. But you know,
Nazra doesn't take over. Nazra has her own mind, and Nazra has been and will continue to be a critical part of the CLT board, but also a bloody good neighbour. And that's the bit I'm interested in. She lives 2 doors away from me, and everybody needs good neighbours.
I mean, we've got a fresh board almost starting, and new board members that have started. So what I always say is I've benefited from the hard work of the Hazels, the Ronnies, the Maria, the Dorothys, and I respect the history so much of what they've done. All I've done is get a gorgeous house, be on telly numerous times, be interviewed numerous times by, you know, The Guardian and The Telegraph and whatever else. Trips to Amsterdam just to tell the world, you know, how great we are. City Hall, London, you know, I've benefited massively, and so has my daughter, just because we have such a nice quality of life. So it's just about, you know, looking back to what the likes of, you know, the past and what they've done and how they've done it. It was not easy. It wasn't a walk in the park for them. But now, the newer members, we need to, you know, pull our socks up and crack on. So,
yeah, I think you're right. And I think that the change is good. I don't think that COVID has brought about the change, but I think it will influence and inform the change, you know. And I do think COVID has been the shittest thing ever. I mean, I lost my own sister to it, but it's made us think. We have to rethink. And I think that meetings like this could never be so intimate if they were done in a hall. And this has seemed to me like a really intimate, important meeting where everybody's input is valued. And that is really what we want in the way of boards and community meetings in the way forward. And more people can do things doing virtual stuff. You can actually hit a big, and I think in the future we'll look to doing a mix of things, but it also has an impact on, you know, shopping and the high streets and what people are looking for. And I think that markets will become even more critical then, because they will they'll help people to also sell and to buy online. And you know, I think to have a community land trust selling space would be a fantastic idea.
Can I just ask a question and broaden it out a bit?
Yeah.
Obviously, with Granby and Catherine's here from Home Baked, you know, these are projects that have been going a good decade in terms of what they've been doing. And obviously, we've got a city with some challenges still. You know, we're still reeling from post-industrial decline and lack of investment from the south for decades.
I think Liverpool's always been a challenge to everybody, which is why I think that Liverpool should have its own passport. Right. I think that one reason that Liverpool is challenging is because it's got some very feisty women in it. Also because it is, yeah, thank you for the thumbs up. It is a port. It is the world in one city. And that world in one city has been sadly neglected by the council, who use the world in one city as their strapline. Right. So consequently, you have huge areas of Liverpool that have been laid waste, both through local and national government and through discrimination. But because most Scousers have mostly had their backs to the wall for most of their lives, and because it is a very matriarchal city, I think we're great fighters, and I think it's what makes us strong.
But my question was a little bit like, you know, if you were 10 years ago, what would help to make this journey, you know, how do we get more of this happening? What would help?
I don't know, because you see, it's a question that can't be answered. I'm not 10 years ago, and this isn't 10 years ago, and the landscape is changing. And what would have made things different for us was support to know where to get money from. So we had some of that support from the chair we had at the time, which was Erica Rushton, because she already had connections. We had support from a millionaire who was a social entrepreneur. And although that support has come with a cost, which has been quite difficult, without it, we would never, ever have been able to match fund. So what I think is the most important thing that would have helped us would be a pot of money for us to match fund against, or something for us to initially match fund against. It was only because we had a high profile before we started to develop that, before we had the money, because we'd already done the gardening and won prizes, because we'd made a fuss, because there were so many empty houses, because we challenged Liverpool City Council and taken them to court a couple of times. And this is all before the Community Land Trust. But when we formed as a Community Land Trust, what would have really helped us is access to finances and access to financial advice that's of good quality. We had a lot of stuff from Power to Change who were really helpful, but sometimes the help that you get isn't the help that you need.
Right.
Yeah, and often the help comes with an eon of form filling and people checking you. And it's what I find it does is that it actually makes you feel less secure in yourself, less able to do things, and you know, and less able to fulfill ideas that have come from the ground. Because in life we make compromises, and the compromises that the CLT have had to make are massive, and we'll continue to have to make them. So because that is life, that's real life. And the dreams that we had, you know, you can't have a street full of castles, you know, when it's a street full of terraces. And so basically you have to fit the cloth. You have to, you know, you have to make sure you can afford what you're planning to do. But I think we made mistakes which cost us quite a lot of money. So I think really good advice. And I tell you what, a pool of trusted workmen, you know, trusted builders who'll give you a true price, won't add on to it. Another thing that we did was we wanted to involve young people from the start in apprenticeships and stuff like that. And we actually cocked that up as well. So maybe a pool of someone who can say this is learning opportunities. So everything we ever tried to do, we really tried to do it well with the best of intentions and to include as many people as possible. But we've fallen by the wayside, and it's hard to talk. Power to Change provide all sorts of advice, and people who come along and people who help you set up your business plan and all the rest of it. But there's never the intimacy of talking to people that you know and getting, you know, this is what we have, this is what we can do for you, this is how you can get a loan, and then you can match fund against that. This is what you have to put in order, you know. And I think that as a CLT sort of hub, that maybe you might be able to provide, you know, maybe look at a way of having a pocket funding that people can, you know, use when it's needed to gain funding, you know, not to keep it, to repay it. But that would, if we hadn't come across the millionaire and the person, it was through the millionaire that we were also introduced to Assemble. So there was a lot of things happened, and I don't believe in coincidence, but I do believe in good timing. And I think that the people who lived in the Granby 4 Streets from the start thought, we can't live like this. We cannot live in empty streets that are fly-tipped, that are filthy, that are depressing, when there's a school up the road. And there was no value to us and no value to our community, and that has to be changed. And you know, but I think money is always critical. So good financial advice, access to money is really important. And access, because again, we weren't the only land trust that cocked up with a build, because the builder was untrustworthy. And the same, quite a few land trusts in Liverpool use this building company. But I think maybe some support around tendering that is not complicated, that actually has a look at people's experiences and say this is a preferred provider because they've worked for this land trust and what they did was good.
It's interesting, just before I bring in Ronnie, that you know, home-based the same. It's kind of the kind of interesting challenge we've got, and I say this as somebody that was heavily involved with home-baked since its beginning. But you know, home-baked 2 had a billionaire who supported it, and that isn't going to rebuild our city. We can't have 50 projects across Liverpool with millionaires, because they're going to get bored and go somewhere.
No, but also you can't. We live within a capitalist society, and no matter how great our intentions are, it's hard to do something. It's hard to do the big things without some big money. The Granby Residents Association, in building the market, that was a massive thing. It was really important. Doing the gardening was really important, and they did cost money, but they didn't cost mega bucks. We weren't looking at something that was like a £5 million project. Yeah, you know. And really, that is the sort of sums of money that we're looking for in order for the 4 streets to finish their portfolio.
Yeah. And that's what we've actually launched at the weekend, a call for a significant localised fund through the Combined Authority to enable more of these projects to get going.
Yeah, but how do and that's it. So it's that startup fund which is really, really important. And I've got great hope for Granby 4 Streets CLT, because it's, you know, it's like Nazra says, and Nazra's young and enthusiastic, and she'll carry that enthusiasm through to. We've got 4 new board members. We've got 3 in a potential, and they come with knowledge, and so we're going. It helps to build a far more strategic board, because it's all very well to have enthusiastic people on the board, but enthusiasm without knowledge is not going to be helpful at the end of the day. I mean, that's like having an untrained Labrador. It doesn't do anybody any good. And we do need to build up within the board. You need a knowledge base.
Ronnie, do you want to come in?
Yeah. I remember when we had Hazel's untrained Labrador on the board.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm trained and it's time I left.
I know it wasn't. No, I wanted to go back on your 10 years ago question, Paul, about, what's different now. What's different now is, like everyone who's on my screen here at the moment, we've got a lot more people with experience of how to do this. Yeah. People call it social capital. Hazel mentioned power to change, and there's reaching communities, and there's lots of those, all those bodies. I know that Home Baked and Granby have had hundreds of thousands of pounds off them.
Yeah, and lots of help, yeah.
The problem with all of those bodies is that, well-meaning and increasingly experienced as they are set up by people who have never done this. They actually don't know how to do this. So they make estimates of what might be needed, and then introduce a load of application forms and measurement factors based on things they don't know how to do. Whereas what we now have is, if you like, the social experience of the 20 odd of us here and hundreds more people around the country who've done it. And I think, like was said just before, the sharing of stuff at places like this is of much more value than you can put money on. The other thing that's happened, just slightly to the side of this community land trust discussion, is that loads of the other social traders in Liverpool have started socially trading. I only know about the Liverpool ones myself, but in the COVID times, some of the first people to get the food to the food banks, to get the nurses' clothes washed, and to bike the stuff around the city were the social traders. There's people in the city couldn't have survived without Home Baked, Peloton, Kitty's Laundrette, and several others. And we've got that as well. And the great thing about them is that they are bringing in some of the cash. I think some of the ideas that we have for starting off, I don't know, just picking, say, New Ferry, because I know there's somebody from New Ferry here. Some of the ideas that you have, you only need actually a small bit of capital. The last thing you need is a great big application form. If somehow you can raise a few £1,000 to have a go at something, then you'll find out whether your committee members like doing it. You'll find out whether your nub of an idea works. And then you've got much more to go and look for the big money with. I agree about the millionaires. Both Home Baked and Granby benefited from the millionaires. I think in time, we'll start to look at when that benefit started to outweigh itself. The trouble with relying on any form of patronage is that they're patronising, and sooner or later you've got to get shut of them. So much better to be able to create your own microfinance and try things out with it first. And I think we shouldn't underestimate the huge experience we've got now.
Yeah. Thank you.
I noticed we've got a question from Laura.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, just a really quick one. I'm from Blackpool, and we are from a young people's organisation that have led on a master plan for our ward area, with a particular focus on how young people live and how they will live in the future. And it's just really inspiring because our master plan was finalised in April last year, and we've kind of just gone round the roundabout with the council and the SLT, and it's just been an absolute nightmare. And we had a chat with Paul last week. He said, just do it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like good advice. But actually listening to you guys today, it sounds like even better advice. And it feels more like something that we can do. And I think there are real similarities between our area and Granby. There are some really clear differences as well. But yeah, just really enthused and dead excited about what we could make of it. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. One of the phrases I always use is do it now and apologise later. Yeah.
Hazel. We
Yeah,
never.
because if you ask permission, you know, don't ask permission just to offer an apology. If you ask permission, the chances are you'll be told no, or some bureaucratic blockage will be put in your way. And I always think you can proffer an apology, particularly, you see, if what you're doing is noticed, it's because it's starting to be successful. It's much harder to take it away from you then.
I always lived by that, and always
Sorry,
think,
Ronnie. Yeah.
as you get older, you can you can get away with it.
Yeah. I mean, we never asked anybody about planting in the streets. We just jemmied up the odd paving stone and stuck something in, you know, and because we had to do, we were living there and nobody else gave a tuppenny toss about the area. And, you know, you have a right, because it's not just about houses. You own the street in which you live. And if you own it, then you also have a responsibility for it. So make it beautiful. Let the artist and the gardener in you run free.
Hazel, can I ask you about the winter gardens? Can
Yes,
you just
you
touch
can.
on this?
Yes, I can. I'm going to put a link up, which I'll put up now. And what would you like to know about the winter garden? Because the winter garden's a big story. Right. Right. Let me put a link up for you, which gives you a 360 degrees view of the winter garden.
Okay.
Sorry. Right, but the winter garden was 2 empty houses in Cairn Street, which were part of our original 10 house thing. Sorry, I can't type and talk at the same time. I can't walk and chew gum. And then there's a number /210.
Did Hazel say Cairn Street?
Cairn Streets, yeah. So we had a 10 house plan and we bought 10 houses for £1 from the market. Right, and 2 of the 10 houses, the thing about getting things for £1 from the council is you don't really know what you've got. It's like going into a pound shop. You're not really sure what you've got until you brought it home and unwrapped it. And we'd had a look at the houses from the outside and we'd had structural engineers look at them. But I mean, a house for £1 is a bargain in anybody's book. And we'd got our £500,000 loan from the social entrepreneur, and we'd managed to match fund. And we said we can definitely do up each house for 85 grand and have money to spare, 800, you know, whatever. Anyway, none of that came true. But particularly what didn't come true was when we finally got access to the 2 houses, which now form the winter garden. And the first thing that happened was that one of the architects fell into the cellar as he opened the front door. Right. And there was a tree growing through the middle of the house, and there was no roof and there was no middle floorboards. And it was like, what are we going to do? And I remember the day vividly. I was with Eleanor, who has been the chair of Granby for a few years, and is a close neighbour. And it was like, oh, and it just sort of came. We'd had some early plans for renovation, which involved glass ceilings and glass roofs, and we hadn't followed those because they were just too impractically expensive. And then suddenly we thought, you know, vision came over us. We could turn this into an indoor winter garden. We could make like based on a Victorian thing, but with glass roofs. And that's where it came from. And it's such a fantastic idea. It's so beautiful and it's so unexpected, because it's just 2 terraced houses that for all the world look the same as the rest of the street, apart from the fact that they are ramped to enable access to everybody. And there's a glass roof and trees growing. Well, the ones that we haven't killed. We've had a bad time with our trees, actually. So, and the Eden Project and Sefton Park Palm House and people like that are really interested, and we've had loads of gardeners come. And basically the Eden Project and people who know about glass houses have told us not to worry about the fact that we seem to be killing a lot of things. and that it takes a long time to establish, but nonetheless I feel terrible guilt about the thrips and the beetles and the dead trees. But having said that, it's like the ripple effect again, because we had gardening in the front of the streets, and then we had the winter garden, which is beautiful, and we will get more trees because we'll just keep trying things until we get it right. And then the back alleys have taken flower as well, and it's just astonishing. In spring and summer, it's the most incredible place to live. And the winter garden is, because there's it's 2 terraced houses, and they're not big houses, but knocked together, they give you a very flexible space. So there's a meeting space, which can also be used as an artist studio, and can also bring in an artist in residence. So because of the Turner Prize, the Arts Council are very keen to fund us. And again, it's about, each opportunity will open several doors of opportunity, and it's what do you take? Which way do you go? And I think that Granby, the CLT, has always taken the path least trodden and started new paths. And I just think that every small place should have a winter garden. I can't tell you the astonishing pleasure it gives me. It's just a place of beauty, and not always peace, but lots of activity. It's been hard during COVID because it costs and we can't use it, but we will be using it again. And when I say we can't use it, we do, because the gardeners still go in every day. Different people, people, we've got Wi-Fi in it and everything, so people can, take the space and take their computers in and hook up to the Wi-Fi and things. So it gets used, but not in the way initially. And we also open it out for bed and breakfast, because it's got a small bedroom, with the most beautiful shower. And again, we've used a lot of stuff that's been made by Granby Workshop. But the thing to do is, just Google Granby Winter Garden, and B, have a look at the Vimeo. It's a 360 degrees video, so it's really, really nice. And C, book and come and stay, or speak to me and have a visit. Come and see it.
We've got to 7.
Have we?
Yeah. So that was fantastic. So I just want just going to wind up and say thank you very much to Hazel for.
Thank you for that link.
I said it was much better having just a conversation. So really appreciate your contribution and your time with us. It's fantastic and very inspiring. Well,
everybody here is inspiring, aren't they? Everybody here is, and I couldn't talk on my own, so I think that everybody here should give themselves a round of applause, because you just make it great.
So just to wrap up, tomorrow we've got 4 events. We've got Brussels CLT from Belgium in the morning, first thing, bright and early with our croissants. We've then at 11 o'clock got, we're looking at self-build and building communities. And actually we've got Richard Bacon, the MP, who's heavily involved in custom build and self-build, speaking at that. 1 o'clock, really important. We've got a session about local authorities and how local authorities can become enablers of community-led housing. And Bristol City Council will be talking at that, who are doing very inspiring stuff to enable this to happen on a scale across their city. So it's going to be great hearing that. And then we're ending with a 2-hour discussion around how we can get more Black-led community housing projects off the ground, and what the hub should do to make sure that happens. Because as we know, the Black community and their involvement in housing associations at board level, at senior levels, is so low, and it's just not acceptable. So we want to look at what the hub should be doing to ensure we're getting more projects off the ground. So a packed day, and then Home Baked have got a day on Saturday. But I really want to thank you, Hazel and Ronnie and everybody. It's been great. And we will share the film of this.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody. Cheers. And thanks, Nazra. Cheers. Bye. And good to see you all. Stay in touch. Bye.